Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today we're going to keep celebrating Christmas in July with this super pretty cardinal card using Waffle Flower July 2025 release products. These have been out for a couple of weeks and I did this card as part of my July Patreon exclusive and I am now sharing it here on my YouTube channel in the edited version. I have die cut the wonderful wood grain background from some Spellbinders Fun cardstock, and I was trying to decide the best way I wanted to do the stencil for this. So as you can see that the wood grain has a die as well as the stencil. So I have die cut it first using the background plate, and now we're going to take a couple of shades of Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink in the colors Gingerbread and Cocoa, and we're going to stencil the two pieces or the two different colors over our background. So I'm starting with Gingerbread and I'm using a large blending brush from Spellbinders to apply that color. And I'm trying to be kind of careful with it since lines are hard to stencil. And ultimately I thought, you know what, this is silly. Let's use a pouncer. A pouncer is going to work so much better over these kind of flimsy lines in any kind of a lined stencil, whether it's a diagonal or a stripe of some sort. And you can see how my lines aren't moving. So if you have a paper pouncer handy, or maybe you just want to pick some up, I highly recommend them for any kind of delicate stenciling that you're wanting to do. The application works so much easier. After I've stenciled the first layer of my first stencil, I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and I am using my Glassboard Studio glass mat with the magnets here just to help hold things down, plus I'm using a little post-it tape as well. We're going to take the second piece of that stencil, and I am going ahead and taping mine in place today. I just felt like it worked a little bit better. You know, I do it different every day. That's just how it rolls. And we are going to now do our darker color, which in this case is going to be Cocoa. And again, I'm going to use that pouncer, and I am using a very heavy hand to apply that ink right over the background, just like so. So just pouncing all of that on, making sure I'm getting super good coverage. And then when I remove this, we're going to have a wonderful wood grain effect. But to me, it is still a little too harsh, if you will. And as much as I like this and I like all the colors, I decided to go ahead then, and now we're going to go back with our blending brush, and the color that's on our brush, we're going to use whatever was left. It doesn't look like it was transferring that much ink. So let's go ahead and grab our lightest color of ink in this trio from Simon Says Stamp, and we are going to go ahead and blend this all over the top. We're not covering up the stenciling we did, but instead I think it's going to give us a very beautiful, much more realistic effect. Even starting with that brown or light tan shade of cardstock. I love it because I feel like I don't have to work quite so hard to get good coverage. Oh, that looks amazing. Okay, now that we have our background, we're going to go ahead and clean up our work surface, and we're going to start working on the beautiful frame that we're going to then build on this card. So kind of my imagining for this card, if you will, is like maybe a wood door or something like that, and we're building a frame on that door, or the greenery and the cardinals are sitting inside. That's kind of, in my mind, the story I tell myself. So something different that I tried with this card that I have not done before with my stenciling is my base layers for the Poinsettia frame from Waffle Flower are die cut from brushed white cardstock. And we are inking right over that brushed white cardstock with our juniper and eucalyptus inks from Simon Says Stamp. And I didn't know how this would work. I thought, let's just try it and see what happens. And oh my gosh, you guys, I love it because it almost gives you a shimmery effect, and it worked fantastic. So I'll definitely be doing this again. What we're doing is blending eucalyptus and juniper, and what I love about this poinsettia frame from Waffle Flower is that it's like a single piece. So if you want it to be more of a swag or a garland, you can do that, or you can die cut two of them, flip one upside down or right side up, however you imagine that, and you can create an entire frame. That is what we're going to do today. We have two identical frames for our card. Now, I'm taking some fog cardstock and adding some shading to the individual poinsettia flowers that we're going to be adding on top of the ones that are right on the background. Now, why am I using fog on white? Why did I choose to do white poinsettias? My thinking with this card was as much as I love red, I felt like my cardinals may not pop as much as I wanted them to if I chose to do red poinsettias. And so what I ended up doing was going ahead and die cutting all of those additional flowers that are going to go on our border from the brushed white, and we're going to pop them up with foam adhesive right on top of the ones that are on the border. Now, again, that's completely optional. That's just a little bit of added dimension and interest to add to this card. We're actually going to also be adding some individual leaves and some sparkly berries. It's not all going to be ink blending. I really wanted to do a lot of different textures and interests on this card, to add interest, to this card, just because I love that effect and how it looks. So here I'm just doing that second border really quickly. And again, if you want to keep that frame flat, by all means, take the dies down below, do your inking with those dies right on your base layer. You could even ink your base layer, ink the individual flowers, add those right on top. There's a lot of great ways to really use this set. Okay, here is the frame that's going to go over our wood grain background. We're kind of starting to see this take shape. Now, I actually die cut my cardinals from Alabaster Spellbinders cardstock, which is definitely not a white. Again, I just felt like it might help me start with a little bit of color, even though it's very light ivory, instead of starting from a base white. I love starting from a color cardstock. I feel like I have to work a lot less hard to achieve my color. So what we're going to do, and you can see that green leaf on my table. I originally had die cut some of the green components for my card from Fern Spellbinders cardstock, and I pretty quickly realized, no, that is not the right color for for eucalyptus and juniper color inks. So we're actually going to have to die cut some additional leaves from, I believe, Sage cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and that is going to look much, much better. So the other thing I'm doing, and the reason my cardinals are on my card right now, anywhere that I have the cardinals, I'm not going to pop up additional flowers. So where that cardinal on the left is sitting, we're not going to pop that flower up. If there's another white flower along the right side of the card, the smaller one, we're not going to pop that one up. If I could make it a little bit easier on myself, that's what I was doing. So right now I'm just working on any of those additional flowers that need to be popped up, and I'm doing that right now, and then we're going to work on the other components. So see how that green, that is way too bright. That does not go with my ink at all. We're going to just save those for another card. Now that we have the right color of cardstock for our individual leaves, and again, this is from that poinsettia set. They're just a great layering medium. We are going to go ahead and ink up the 3 individual leaves from this with a little bit of juniper ink. That's going to give us a little bit of shading to those leaves. You're going to see that I'm going to tuck a couple up here in the top right corner. We're going to tuck another one down a little bit lower, and that's going to provide some additional dimension and interest to our card. Super simple shading. It's just a little shade darker than the stenciling we previously did, and I love how that looks. So that cardinal on the left will almost kind of be sitting on that little branch. Now that we have that done, we're going to pop up our poinsettia frame with foam adhesive squares. Now this does mean we have to kind of use a lot of foam squares and be very selective with where we place those, but I do love the little bit of dimension that the foam provides for this step. And there we're just adding the second half. I love how this looks like a seamless border. Is that not incredible? I love this set. It is so good. Okay, now we are ready to start working on the rest of the components. We're going to glue those individual leaves, kind of tucking them underneath our flower up here at the top, and then we're going to just layer the other one down here along the bottom. I will use my Cardinal die cut just as somewhat of a guide to help me with making sure my placement of that is where I want that to go. And we're also going to add our red berries. Now this is where I really utilized a little bit more of that dimension texture. Texture is the word I'm looking for. We're using some Spellbinders cardstock, and this is the assorted treasured cardstock. So it gives you a bunch of different textures and finishes, and we're going to utilize those as well as some flat pomegranate cardstock for like the little berries and things, which we will add glossy accents to later. But I love like the glittery cardstock, the flat matte kind of brushed looking cardstock for the reds. That's going to be for some of the bigger berries, but we're adding in the color for our card. Remember, I kept my poinsettias white so that when I go to add in my cardinals, that's going to provide that big red pop of color, but I like the little touches and hints of red throughout with all of the berries. For the center of the poinsettias, I used some Tuscan Spellbinders cardstock. That great mustardy yellow, again, provides a wonderful finish to the center, but I did feel like it was a little flat, so whatever ink was left on a brown blending brush is what I used to ink the edges of that Tuscan yellow. The tweezers really helped with perfect placement for this. I could not seem to get this going straight, so I'm just spinning my card around. There we go. Okay, so there is my flower center, and now the poinsettia really does come to life. We're going to add our layers for our larger berries. So you can see that it has a little bit of a texture to that, and then we'll add the layer piece on top, which is a great glittery red berry. So I'm almost thinking, you know, those sugared red berries that are in a lot of our holiday decor. And holding your little teeny tiny pieces with your tweezers and then taking your small blending brush to that, if you need to ink blend it at all, I hope that really helped me be able to easily do that without getting my fingers quite so inked up, which I'm prone to do. Now we're layering on the glittery berries. I love this. I feel like this gives so much interest to the card. And we're going to do these down here. We're adding all the rest of the centers. Anything that I think might get shown. I think a couple of these flowers actually, we cover up the flower centers. And so I probably could have left this off, but sometimes at the time, it's just easier to add those pieces and not have to worry in case they do peek out from behind anything we're layering on top. And And here is my little small berry. If the paper is not laying flat as it's drying, I will often use my tweezers to kind of pinch and hold that in place just to help kind of secure it while my glue is drying. Our frame is almost complete. We just have a couple more flower centers and then we're going to work on the cardinals, and I have some tips for working on the cardinals and I hope you find it useful. Number one, we die cut the cardinals from some ivory cardstock. I used Spellbinders Alabaster, but we're also going to start with some orange base colors. Now, before I do that, I realized I felt like I needed some sparkly or kind of snowy spatter all over my background. I want that to be drying while I'm working on my sentiment and my cardinals. So we are going to check this. This is a new sparkle product from Spellbinders. I believe it's being released in August, but any kind of sparkly product, the Lawn Fawn Sparkle would work good, or any kind of thing like that if you don't have it right now, or wait for this to be released. I am giving a little preview of it here, and I am going to just tap this all over. It's not going to give us a pure white snowy look necessarily, but more of a soft sparkly look, and I was super generous with this. So I am tapping this all over, and I wanted to do this now before I add the cardinals. I didn't really want spatter all over my cardinals for this card necessarily, so I am doing this right now. It does dry really quick. I'm making sure that all of my leaves, my flowers, all have a little touches of that sparkly substance all over them. The sparkle silk, it looks so good. I did think I needed a little bit of more of a white snowy effect as well. So the darker splatters on my card is a little bit of this splatter product from Spellbinders. I did water it down with a little touch of water and then just took a paintbrush and splattered that all over the background of my card. Okay, we're setting that aside to dry. We're going to grab the coordinating stencil for our cardinal. You guys, this is amazing. So the cardinal die does die cut the cardinal facing two different directions. The stencil only goes one direction. That's because you simply flip it over to use it the other way. Now remember, I'm starting with alabaster cardstock, and I am actually using shades of orangey red for my cardinal, starting with some clay. And you might be thinking, nope, do not like that. Stay with me because I think it's going to turn out amazing. That is just our base layer, that clay color. So I'm going to pop that off. And we're going to clean, since all of the layers are on the single stencil, I'm just going to kind of clean it there as I go. I'm going to move my cardinal over, and we're going to stencil the next part of the card with some of the brick color. So I've got brick and terracotta and clay, but we're going to actually maybe terracotta. Let's start with terracotta first. So blending that in. We're going to take some brick then and layer that on top, just like so. And we're going to move it over again. Now I know my cardinal still looks orange, but it's going to get there. Now we're going back to the first stencil area, and I'm going to blend a little bit of the brick color in over the clay that we did originally. Just adding that shading so that really the lightest areas for my cardinal are kind of the underbelly and a little bit, up there by the face. Okay, the third part of the stencil now is going to be the feet and the eye. And for this, I was going to use charcoal, but I did end up using Woodsy from Simon Says Stamp. And I love it because it has a little bit more of a warm vibe to it instead of that cool gray that the charcoal has. And look at that. I blended it a little bit over some of the red areas. and just darkened them up. And to me, this gives our cardinal so much depth and dimension instead of a flat red. Look at that beautiful cardinal created with orange-ish inks. So just kind of hopefully provide some inspiration on when you're inking up your birds, your images. Think of outside the box maybe a little bit, if you will, on your base colors until you build to that final color. Now, I'm going to show for the second cardinal, I'm flipping my stencil over, and this is the right facing cardinal. The left facing cardinal, I used the stencil face up, and we're going to do the same thing. I've lined it up with the first part of the stencil, and I'm going in with clay ink and doing an all over base of that kind of burnt orange color. Then I did take my brick and I'm going to go around the head a little bit. And I didn't think my stencil was lined up very well. Let's fix that. And down here around the tail, we're going to deepen and darken that with a little bit of the brick color as well over the clay. Then we're going to go to the second part of the stencil. This is where we're going to apply the terracotta and the brick. Terracotta first, then the brick color. So all over this part of the stencil with terracotta, then just around the edges with our brick. We're going to move to the third part of the stencil. Also, there is an eye for the bird, but I am avoiding that for this. We don't need it. And I'm going to go in with my woodsy color of ink and go in very heavy-handed for the foot, the face, and to add shading right over top of the red section of my cardinal. And then you can also go back if you want to with your blending brushes if you feel that you missed a couple spots or you need to add some extra ink. Oh my gosh, look at these beautiful cardinals. I absolutely love these. Now we're going to pull our background back in. We're going to be selective with where we get our foam or where we place our foam adhesive on the back of the cardinal, and we're going to tuck our cardinals into the background just like so. And I don't want them perfectly lined up. So you'll notice the cardinal on the right is sitting a little higher. The cardinal down here on the left is going to sit slightly lower, but they're facing one another. We're going to tuck that into our wreath, which perfectly leaves a spot open for our sentiment. We are going to use the Poinsettia Frame Sentiment stamp sets, and I am using the Season's Greeting sentiment from this set. I think it's going to fill the space beautifully. I love the combination of fonts in this, and I'm just going to take a little bit of black cardstock here. It looks like I needed to cut down a new sheet in half. I'm going to place that in my MISTI, and then I am going to prep my cardstock with a powder tool. I like using the powder tool most of the time when I'm doing heat embossing, but especially on a dark or a black cardstock. I think it just helps limit where those stray embossing powder flakes go to. We're going to stamp our sentiment with clear ink right on that black cardstock. And I like using the MISTI for this. I like using the MISTI for all of my stamping, 99.9%. However, for this, it has a pretty big surface area, and I may want to stamp that more than once just to make sure that I get a really good impression. I almost always do this. Then we're going to take our white embossing powder. We're going to sprinkle this on, heat set it, and use the coordinating die to die cut our greeting. I'm going to pop up my sentiment with a little bit of foam adhesive, tucking it kind of back behind most of the greenery and florals in our poinsettia frame, but also in front of others. So kind of making sure that it's centered as much as possible. I definitely don't want it covering up my cardinal's head, so that little swoop there underneath the G is going to be underneath. Oh, that looks so good. It fills in the space. And now it's time for the fun part, which is just the embellishing. We're going to start with the Spellbinders Red Gems. And what I like to do for this is I have all of my gems on a binder ring, and we're going to go ahead and grab those and scatter those throughout our card. I like using the tip of a piercing tool to carefully pick up all of these little sticky gems off of the backing sheet and place them right where I want them to go. I think the addition of scattering a few of these fun little sparkly gems throughout adds that extra touch of holiday sparkle. Then I'm placing some glue all over the front of a top fold card base. We're going to just pop our panel right there on our card. And remember, we still need to add eyes. And I felt like my little berry sprigs needed a touch of glossy accents, as did the center of my poinsettias. Using a little glossy accents here, and it gooped out. So I'm picking it up with my finger and just wiping that on a paper towel or rag. I am going to add the glossy accents. I know it looks a little milky here, but in the finished card, it dries completely clear, provides some wonderful dimension, and looks fantastic. And I noticed my leaf is kind of covering up part of this berry, but it needs glossy accents. So I'm lifting it up and just adding the glossy accents before I just kind of carefully lay that back down. Again, you want to do your glossy accents near the end so that you don't accidentally drag your hand through it. Now, during the live, I realized I'm completely out of my favorite teeny tiny black pearls, and a viewer said, "Oh, just take a different color and use your alcohol ink marker to color them." Duh. I never remembered to do that, you guys. So I went ahead and grabbed some of these gray ones. I had lots and lots of them. We're going to just grab our dark black marker, and I am coloring those in. I put them on a little piece of Post-it tape to help hold them down. And then we're simply going to add some glue to our cardinals, and we're going to pop those eyes in place so that they have wonderful dimensional eyes that I feel like look really beautiful on the cardinal. You can use the stencil portion of this, but I love the way the dimensional eye looks for the birds. I feel like I ended up chasing around this little pearl all over my desk. It did not want to go the right direction. I finally get it picked up with my embellishment wand and popped in place. What did we do before embellishment wands, friends? I do not even know. And if at all, if some of the coloring smudged, I probably should have let the coloring sit for a little bit longer before trying to put them on my card. Go ahead and do a little touch up as needed. Now, I thought I was finished, but I did notice I want some little white highlights on the beaks of my cardinals. We're not going to really do any other white inking, but I'm taking a white pen and adding those highlights. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this holiday themed card featuring Waffle Flower July 2025 release products. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community.